Hello there, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Samantha and this is my channel where I talk all about books. Anyway, today I'm coming to you with my first wrap up of the new year. Yes, we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of January. January was the longest month ever, but also I didn't do anything, so it feels like it went quickly because I didn't accomplish anything. But in my defense, I'm not angry at myself for not accomplishing anything. I have not had a good month. Oh my god. I finished off the year with COVID, so I also started off the new year with COVID, and I wasn't even able to leave the house until the 8th of January, I think, was the day I tested negative. Because I was negative and I had 2 days of being negative in a row, I was then able to leave the house. And it had been well over a week. It had been almost 2 weeks since I tested positive. Anyway, so I left the house, went to work, woke up the next morning with a terrible sore throat, and I was like, okay, it's probably just because I overdid it and I went to work and worked a really long shift and I'll be fine tomorrow after I rest some more. Woke up the next day, still had a sore throat, but it wasn't that bad. I was like, it's bad, but it's not that bad. Anyway, I woke up the next day and I was in agony because it turns out that I had developed a throat infection after my COVIDs. So yeah, I went from having COVID, went back to work for 1 day after having to take multiple days off because I was still testing positive. Then I had to take another week off from work because I was on antibiotics and I was feeling awful because it wasn't just the pain of my throat, but also I had a fever and just a bunch of bad symptoms as well. So yeah, 0 out of 10 would not recommend a throat infection. And then post throat infection, I had a bunch of mouth ulcers in the back of my throat, or the back of my mouth and my throat. So it was still extremely painful to swallow for about a week and a half after my throat infection was gone, and it's only now just started to get better. There are some signs of mouth ulcers, but they're almost gone. Anyway, so all in all, it has been a god-awful month for me in that respect. I did read 5 books, however, so that's exciting. Actually, I only read 4 books in their entirety. I DNF'd 1 book. I actually DNF'd my first book that I started reading this year. Anyway, that is such a long tangent. That was just a recap of how my January went. So I hope you all had a much better January than I did. So let me know how your January went down below. But let's talk about the books, shall we? I think I mentioned in my last wrap up that I want to start doing my wrap ups in rating order rather than chronological, because that's how I always used to do it. So that's how I'm going to do it today. So I'm going to start off with my DNF. So the first book that I was reading at the start of the year and ended up DNFing was The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Now, I feel really bad about this one because, first of all, this is one of the most stunning covers I've ever seen. I really just love this cover so much. Also, I built this book up in my head for 2 years because I got this at the end of 2019. I put it on my list of books to read in 2020 and then 21 as well. So I was really excited for this book and I'd heard so many amazing reviews. But this is one of those books where you either love it or you hate it. And for me, I was over 100 pages in and I was so bored and I did not like the writing style at all, which is really weird because that is one of the things that most people praise the most about this book. They love how lyrical and beautiful the writing is. But for me, it just was not working, and yeah, I was so bored. If you know what this book is about, this basically follows our main character Zachary, who is in his university library one day and he finds this book which has just a bunch of stories in it, but it also contains this one story from his childhood that he has never told anyone. So it's why is this random book containing a story about my life? So it's kind of a mystery surrounding that. And then there's this thing called The Starless Sea, which I didn't actually find out what it was, but this book is just so weirdly written, where we get snippets of these other stories, which I think are from the book that Zachary finds, and then we get Zachary's story and the mystery, and I was intrigued, but I just did not want to continue on because I was so bored. And I don't know, I would say this is a proper DNF rather than a soft DNF. I plan to come back to it. I don't think I want to. I think I'm just done with it because I read some of the negative reviews about it to try and see if the people, if their thoughts kind of aligned with what I was feeling at that time. And just judging by those, I don't think I'm gonna enjoy the rest of it. So there's just no point in me reading it, putting myself into a reading slump. So yeah, I'm very sad to DNF this book because it is so gorgeous, but at least it is now a book off of my physical TBR. So that's something. So the next book I'm going to talk about is actually the first book that I finished in the month. So weird, but whatever. It's weird for me to not do it chronologically. In my head, I'm no, chronological order, but this I think this makes more sense. Anyway, I read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is also called You and Me on Vacation in the UK, which is weird, but actually makes more sense because People We Meet on Vacation makes it seem like they meet loads of people and it involves like a lot of other people, but mainly it's just about our two characters. I feel like her name is Poppy, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know that the guy is called Alex because when I first started reading that book, I was like, oh, this is so fun because my boyfriend is called Alex. So it was really fun for me to read a love interest called Alex because I was like, oh, Alexes are so great. We love them. This basically just follows those two characters, and essentially they met like 12 years ago, and about 10 years ago they started going on a holiday every year together, or a couple every year, but like they always had their summer holiday. But 2 years ago something happened and now they are not even on speaking terms, but Poppy decides to have one last go at like rekindling their friendship, so she suggests that they go on holiday to Palm Springs, and it's a bit of a nightmare. And it's also a friends to lovers story, which is a trope that I really enjoy, but for this one, I don't know. And when I immediately finished it, I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. And I was like, I really enjoyed this. But then, like, I got to the end of the month and I was trying to think about the book and I was like, but what did I like? I found it pretty frustrating. The actual, like, conflict was, I think, very stupid. And basically, it was an overreaction to something that was pretty small. And if they had just communicated the tiniest little bit, it would have sorted out the issue. And also, I just feel like Poppy was a pretty annoying character and Alex was kind of bland. So like when I was thinking about it more, I was like, this is not a 3.5 stars. This is like a 3-star, maybe even like a 2.5. Like, it's not an awful book, but it wasn't as good as I initially thought. Like, after thinking about it a bit more, I was like, actually, I don't think I like it very much. So I lowered my rating to like a 2.5, 3, 2.75 maybe. Like, I don't know, a low 3. Let's call it a low 3. I was just disappointed. I'm still planning to read Beach Read, which was Emily Henry's first book, which popped off. I haven't read it yet, so I'm still definitely planning to read that one. And I might pick up her new book, which I think comes out pretty soon, called Book Lovers, but I don't know. We'll see. I'll see how I feel about Beach Read first, and then see if I want to continue on with her stuff. This one was just a bit disappointing, but it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, the next book I'm talking about was also a disappointment, and that was The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. On Storygraph, I give it 3.25 out of 5 stars. This book basically follows the daughters of like famous Victorian villains, I guess, in a way, like from like villains from books. Like this book is particularly focused on the daughter of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and then we also have like Frankenstein, and then a few others which were from more obscure books that I hadn't heard of. So maybe they're not obscure, but I just hadn't heard of them. And it basically follows their adventures, all of their paths cross, and then this like group of girls solve mysteries. Here's the situation. I read this when I was like in the throes of my throat infection. I was just lying on the sofa all day reading this book on my phone, and I really enjoyed the first 60% of the book. I was having such a fun time with it. Loved the characters, and I really enjoyed the bits where like they interject, which some people don't like. I personally did really enjoy it. Then the next 20%, I was like, okay, I'm getting bored now. This is slowing down. Like, this is quite slow. And then the last 20% was extremely dull for me, which is weird because it was like the climax of the book, like exciting things were happening. But then like I feel like we finished off the book with like these really long monologues of people telling their story, which happened throughout the book actually. Like every time we met a new girl, her story would be told in this like really long chapter, and it would just be her talking for ages about her life and how she came to be. And like I get it because it's like mixing together so many different stories that like if you're not familiar with the story, obviously you basically need a summary of that book. So I feel like we were getting a lot of that. So like I know a lot more about books that I had never heard of before, but did I want to know that? Not necessarily. It was really funny and I found it mostly entertaining, but then the end was so boring. And then the next book is over 700 pages, so I'm like, do I want to continue? I don't know. I'm not sure, but for now I'm like DNFing the series at that. But I did enjoy it. I gave it 3 stars. I gave it 3.25 stars. but I was just disappointed. Anyway, moving on. My camera is dying, which is not good because still have a lot to talk about, so I'm gonna go as fast as I can. The next book that I read was my nonfiction book for the month because I said in my goals video that I wanted to read one nonfiction book a month, and I read The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. This basically talks about the 5 women who were killed by Jack the Ripper because history has kind of almost glorified him in a way and just painted these women as if they were prostitutes, and they weren't all prostitutes, and even if they were, it doesn't matter and it doesn't excuse his actions. Whereas painting them in that way has kind of made society look down upon these women in a way and kind of just be more intrigued by Jack the Ripper's story than the women. Anyway, so it was basically just humanizing and telling the story of these 5 women. I ended up giving this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was definitely an interesting and eye-opening read. I obviously learned a lot more about the situation, but I think some of it was a little bit dull. We just had very long descriptions of life in the Victorian era, which is very interesting, but at the same time, when you have that 5 times over, it does get a little bit dull. But I did really enjoy the conclusion. I thought the conclusion summed everything up very well, which is obviously the point of a conclusion. Some of it was just a little bit dry, but overall it was enjoyable. I would recommend it if this is a topic that's interesting to you, and I give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Now, moving on to my favorite book of the month, which was actually a reread, but I first read it about 7 years ago, but I finally reread The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. So like I said, I first read this book 7 years ago when I used to be more of a plot-driven reader, and I have now very much become a character-driven reader. So this book is better if you like characters, just saying. But I thought I would give this book another chance because I did really enjoy it at the time, but I didn't love it. Even though I gave it a 4.5 on Goodreads, which is so stupid because that's way higher than I should have rated it, because I really, this book took me 4 months to read or something like that. It was crazy. Whereas this time, I think I read it in a week or 2. It still took me a little while just because I've been busy, but I finally reread this and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm so sorry about the change in quality. My camera died, as I thought it would. Anyway, like I was saying, if you don't know what The Raven Boys is about, it basically follows our main character, Blue, who her whole family are basically psychics, apart from her, but she does amplify their power. Anyway, because she's surrounded by psychics, they've always told her that if she kisses her true love, he will die. And so she's always kind of stayed away from boys, and she's been warned away from them to avoid this. And there's this private school called, I actually don't know how to say it, so I've been struggling over that word every time I read it, so I'm not gonna say it because I don't know. But anyway, basically there's this private school for boys, and the boys who attend there are called the Raven Boys, and she's been especially warned off of them, but she crosses paths with 4 of them, and their lives become intertwined in this search for a ley line, which is I don't even know what a ley line is, but anyway, and yeah, she basically ends up becoming entwined with these 4 boys who are searching for this dead Welsh king who is believed to be near a ley line. It's very much a character-driven story. You're definitely supposed to care a lot about the characters, which I would say I do, but I don't love the characters. I'm just intrigued to see where their stories go, but I'm not in love with them. It does have a plot. I feel a lot of people have said this book doesn't actually have a plot, and it does. It's just kind of slow moving, but I did actually really enjoy it, and there were times when I actually didn't want to stop reading because it was quite exciting, especially the ending. So yeah, overall, I actually really enjoyed my time rereading this book, a lot more than I did the first time. I'm definitely going to be continuing on with the series. I already actually have the second book out from my library, and I'm planning to read it in February. Very successful reread, I would say. It's not a new favorite book, but maybe with time I can grow to love the series as I continue on. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But so far, I really enjoyed this, and this was my favorite book that I read this month. I did actually start reading 2 other books, but I didn't finish them, so I'll talk about them in my February wrap-up. But anyway, yeah, those were all the books that I read. Let me know what books you read down below, and if you've read any of the ones I talked about, let me know your thoughts. I would love to know. But that is all I have for this video, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give a thumbs up. If you're new here, feel free to subscribe down below, and I should have another video up at some point very soon. I'm not onto my Sunday schedule like I should be, but maybe one day. So for now, I'm just gonna see you whenever I next see you. Bye.